The pain of public humiliation is a wound that scars the soul, especially when it comes from those we love most. My own children, Mark and Brenda, actually laughed at me. Can you imagine? At my granddaughter Chloe's wedding, no less. It was a moment that just stopped my breath, right there in the open, for everyone to see. They had no idea, not the slightest clue, about the quiet web of secrets I'd carefully woven in my silence. A lifetime of things they never bothered to ask about. They truly thought I was just a frail, penniless old woman, a bit of a burden perhaps, someone to be tolerated and then, ideally, forgotten. They saw my simple clothes, my quiet ways, and just filled in the blanks with what suited their own narrative. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have grasped, was the bitter gift the truth held for them. A gift they were about to receive, whether they wanted it or not. That day, the day Chloe, my beautiful granddaughter, stepped into her. The disdain in their eyes, that cold, dismissive look that cut me to the core, was like a poison. And I, Eleanor, had decided right then and there to transform it into a powerful antidote. My dignity, you see, was worth so much more than any fortune, any social standing they could ever chase after. And they, poor misguided souls, were about to discover that hard truth, the absolute hardest way possible. For years, I'd watched them. I'd seen the gradual emotional coldness creep in, the gentle distancing that became less gentle over time. It was a slow, quiet process, like the tide receding, leaving you stranded without even realizing the water was gone. They didn't see me, not really. They saw a caricature, a role they had assigned me, the quiet mother, the old woman who didn't quite keep up with the times, someone to be politely endured. Their laughter that day, that loud, dismissive sound echoing in a place filled with celebration, was just the peak of a mountain of subtle. Maybe I was just being overly sensitive, as they often subtly suggested, but deep down I knew. I felt the sharp edge of their contempt, the way they'd talk around me, as if I weren't even there, or worse, as if I were a ghost already. That silent humiliation, the kind that whispers to your soul that you are not valued, not seen, not loved in the way you need, was a constant companion. It clung to me, a heavy cloak I couldn't shake off. What they considered my weakness, my quietness, my apparent simplicity, my lack of outward ambition, was, in fact, the very foundation of a revelation that would change everything they thought they knew about me, about us. They saw an old woman, perhaps a little lost, perhaps a little behind the times. But what they couldn't see, what they never imagined, was the unwavering strength that was quietly bubbling beneath the surface, a truth I had guarded for so long. Oh, they reveled in the ignorance of their own cruelty that day. They were so Ute. That day, their laughter echoing, their dismissive eyes fixed on me, I was just Eleanor, 72 years old, mind you, born and raised in a quiet little town deep in rural Texas. My roots run deep there, you see, in that red earth. I lived a simple life, always did. It was my choice. My world revolved around family. That was my North Star. I always believed in blood ties, held them as something unshakable, something sacred. That was my core, my deepest truth. My days, before all this current storm, were filled with small, quiet joys, the simple rhythm of life. Early mornings, the light filtering soft through the kitchen window, the comforting scent of coffee brewing. I'd spend hours tending my garden, my hands in the soil, feeling the earth, coaxing life from seeds. Tomatoes ripening under the Texas sun, fragrant roses, the gentle rustle of herbs. That little patch of green, it was my sanctuary, my quiet rebellion against the world's noise. And knitting. Oh, I loved knitting. Each click of the needles, a soothing sound. I made blankets, soft and warm, for my grandchildren. Scarves for my children when they were still small enough to hug me tight, without a second thought. Each stitch was a tiny prayer, a silent wish for their happiness, for their peace. It was a rhythm, a gentle hum, that disguised a profound secret, a secret I carried close, right next to my heart, like a precious, fragile bird, unseen but always there. I was always discreet, always. Never one for grand displays, never craved the spotlight. Luxuries? They just didn't interest me, or so I let them believe. My children, Mark and Brenda, they saw that. They saw my simple clothes, my quiet ways, and they interpreted it, they interpreted it in their own way. They thought it was a lack of ambition, a certain naivete. I could almost hear the unspoken words, "Mom just doesn't get it. She's so old-fashioned." They pictured me as this simple, sweet grandmother, a bit out of touch with the world, someone who hadn't quite made it. They didn't imagine, not for a second, what was truly behind that calm, seemingly ordinary facade. They never guessed there was a love story, a deep, abiding one, a secret union that no one else knew about. Not even them. It was just ours. Richard, my Richard. He was the man who not only completed me, but was, to the world, one of the country's most prominent businessmen. Can you imagine the contrast? Him with his grand public life, and me with my quiet, private one. On paper, we were two different worlds, but together, we were simply Richard and Eleanor. We understood each other in a way no one else ever could. I wore a simple band, a plain gold circle. It wasn't flashy, didn't scream wealth. It was hidden, always, beneath the sleeve of my dress, tucked away from curious eyes. That little band, it was our secret symbol, a quiet, powerful testament to a life, a love, only he and I truly knew, truly shared. My house, the one I'd lived in for so many years, it looked modest enough from the outside, just a regular home, like any other in my small Texas town. Nothing to draw attention. But inside, it held more than just memories. It held the quiet wisdom of someone who understands timing, someone who knows how to wait, how to be patient, how to let things unfold. In Mark and Brenda's eyes, I was just Mom, the one who didn't keep up appearances, the one who probably needed a little help here and there, a bit of looking after, a burden, perhaps, something to be tolerated, maybe even pitied, in their grand, bustling lives. Their focus was always on prestige, on what others saw, on building their own version of success. They didn't know that true wealth, the kind that truly matters, isn't something you flaunt for show. It's not about flashy cars or designer clothes or the biggest house. No, true wealth is kept for a greater, deeper purpose. It's held tight, safe within yourself, waiting for the very right moment to reveal itself. And that moment, after so many years, was getting closer than they could ever imagine. It was coming. It was strange, how these things just creep up on you. Like a slow fog rolling in. You barely notice it at first. But as the years went by, I couldn't ignore it anymore. That subtle distancing. It started with my children, Mark and Brenda. My son, Mark, always so busy with his law practice, always chasing the next big client. And Brenda, my daughter, so focused on her social climbing, her charity galas, making sure she was always seen in the right places with the right people. Their lives, they just seemed to grow bigger and bigger, while mine, in their eyes, seemed to shrink. Visits. They became rarer. At first, it was just a little less often. Then, it became a pattern. The calls would get shorter, the excuses more elaborate. Always something. A meeting, a flight, a child's event they couldn't miss. Never a simple, "Mom, I just want to see you." Never a quiet afternoon like we used to have. Their patience with the old woman, that's how I felt they saw me. It just wore thin so quickly. I could feel it, like a chill in the air when they were around. I was becoming, to them, just an inconvenient detail in their busy, important lives. Someone to be managed, rather than loved. They were always seeking prestige, social recognition. It was like a hunger in them, a need I just couldn't understand. I had my quiet life, my garden, my knitting, and they had their grand ambitions. Our paths just diverged so sharply, and I was left standing on my own side of the road, watching them walk further and further away. Then, my Chloe, so sweet, so full of life, I imagined sharing in the excitement, helping her choose things, being there for every little detail. But that joy, it faded so fast. I soon realized I wasn't really part of the planning. I was an afterthought, a last-minute guest. The kind you invite out of obligation, not because you truly want them there. Decisions about the wedding, they were all made without me. It was going to be held at a luxurious country estate, a grand, imposing place that felt a million miles away from my simple Texas home. I tried to offer suggestions, little things I thought might be helpful, drawing on my years of life and watching other families. But my words, they were just brushed aside. A condescending smile, a quick pat on the arm. "Oh, Mom, we've got it all handled." It was a silent blow, being excluded from my own granddaughter's biggest event. A deep, aching pain in my chest that had nowhere to go. It hurt so much to be an outsider looking in, especially when it was my own family. I tried, really, I did. I tried to justify their behavior. I told myself, "Eleanor, they're just so busy. Life is fast now. Maybe it's the rush of daily life. Maybe you're just too sensitive." That was their favorite line, "Oh, Mom, you're so sensitive." It made me question myself, made me wonder if I was imagining things. But then I'd see it again, the coldness in their gazes, the way they'd talk about me to others, in hushed tones, as an unattached senior. Like I was just floating through life without an anchor, without a purpose. That cut me to the bone. It corroded my soul, slowly, bit by bit. like rust eating away at something precious. The humiliation, it set in. It was veiled, subtle, but it was there, a constant presence. I felt it in my bones, and it felt like a heavy quietness, like the air before a big storm. You can't see the lightning yet, but you just know, deep down, that something big is coming. Something is about to break. And I didn't know what it would be, but I could feel it in my very core. And I didn't know what it would be, but I could feel it in my very core. Then, the day of Chloe's wedding, it finally arrived. I remember waking up that morning, a strange quiet in the house, a mixture of anticipation and dread. They had suggested I come alone, you see. A quiet suggestion, but it was clear enough. No need for a ride, no need for them to pick me up, no fuss. Just come, they meant, quietly, like a shadow. So I did. I got ready by myself, in my own time. I chose my best dress, simple, of course, a pale blue, nothing flashy. It was what I had, what I felt comfortable in. It was clean, pressed, and it was mine. A small effort, a quiet act of dignity, in a world that seemed determined to strip it away. I drove myself to the country estate, and oh, what a place it was! Magnificent, imposing. It stretched out before me, grand and sweeping, all manicured lawns and towering stone, the kind of place that whispers of old money, of importance. It was truly breathtaking, and I, in my simple blue dress, parked my old car in a corner of the vast lot, feeling very small against its grandeur. But I walked towards the entrance, my head held as high as I could manage. I stepped into the lobby. It was bustling, filled with people, all dressed elegantly, their voices a polite murmur. I took a moment, just to take it all in, and then I saw them. Mark, Brenda. They were standing near the grand staircase, chatting, laughing, looking perfectly at home in that magnificent setting. And then their eyes found me. It was instantaneous. Their laughter, already there, just changed. It grew louder. It became sharper. It echoed, not just in the high ceiling of the lobby, but right inside my chest. It was a clear, unmistakable sound of disdain. Brenda leaned in close to Mark, her hand covering her mouth, but her voice, oh, her voice carried. It was a loud whisper. "Look at Mom," she said, and her eyes, they practically dripped with scorn. "Alone again. She looks like a lost soul." Mark didn't even bother to hide it. He just shook his head, a dismissive, disgusted little movement, right there in front of everyone, as if to say, "What did you expect? That's just Mom." That moment. It was a physical blow, a direct hit, public, cruel. My own children, laughter meant for joy, twisted into a weapon aimed straight at me. I could feel it. People around, they might not have known the context, might not have known who I was, but they perceived the disrespect. You could see it in their quick glances, the way their conversations momentarily faltered. Their eyes flickered from them to me and back again. A collective understanding of something ugly happening. A chill, cold and sharp, went straight down my spine. Shame, hot and prickly, consumed me, starting from my toes and rushing all the way up to my scalp. It was a deep, burning blush that no one else could see, but I felt it like a fire. And the loneliness, it gripped my chest, tight and unforgiving, like nothing I had ever felt before. It was a suffocating pressure, squeezing all the air out of my lungs. With every harsh laugh, with every contemptuous look from them, a part of me, a tiny piece of my heart, just shattered, like fragile glass breaking into smaller and smaller shards. My mouth went completely dry. It felt like cotton. My throat closed up, and the tears, oh, they threatened. They gathered behind my eyes, pushing, ready to spill over, to betray me completely. But something in me, something deep and stubborn, refused to yield. Not here, not now, not in front of them, not in front of anyone. I lifted my chin. Just a fraction, but it felt like I was moving the mountain. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady myself, trying to find some air in that suffocating space. And then I started walking. I headed towards the ceremony area, away from them, away from their cruel laughter. Every step felt heavy, like my feet were anchored to the floor. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. I knew they were watching. But most of all, I felt my children's eyes, burning on my back, their contempt. It was a fire. It was meant to consume me, to extinguish whatever essence I had left. But in that moment, as I walked, alone, away from them, something shifted. That fire, the one meant to destroy me, it didn't. On the contrary, it began to strengthen me. It hardened something inside me, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was not going to break. Not for them. The walk was endless, each step a test. I found my seat, thankfully near the aisle, slightly removed from the main cluster of family. I sank down, not with defeat, but with a strange, heavy grace. My back was still tingling from their stares, from that cruel, public laughter. I could feel the energy of it, like tiny needles pricking my skin. But the tears, they held back. My throat, though dry, remained silent. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even argue, not even in my head. There was no point. Words, I realized, were utterly useless against such calculated disdain. They wouldn't hear me. They wouldn't understand. They had chosen their narrative, and I was simply the old woman they had outgrown. So I just sat. I smoothed the simple fabric of my dress, my hands steady now, and I watched. I watched the flurry of guests arriving, the elegant hats, the bright, almost blinding smiles. I watched Mark and Brenda from a distance, still basking in their self-important glow, occasionally glancing my way, a smirk playing on their lips, as if to confirm I was still there, still alone, still exactly as they perceived me. I saw the forced laughs among some of the other relatives, the quick, fleeting looks of pity, or perhaps judgment, aimed my way. It was a circus, really, and I, the ringmaster they didn't know was pulling the strings, was simply observing. My silence wasn't weakness. Oh no, it was a shield, yes, but also a strength they could never, ever fathom. They mistook my quietness for fragility, my reserve for simple-mindedness. They had no idea that beneath this calm exterior, a decision firm and unyielding was hardening like stone. In that very moment, sitting there in that beautiful grand hall, I decided. The answer to their cruelty, to their cutting laughter, to their absolute dismissal of who I was, would not come with words. It would come with something far more impactful. It would come with the stark, undeniable revelation of the truth. My truth. I closed my eyes just for a brief instant. The murmur of voices, the rustle of silk, the scent of fresh flowers, it all faded away. And in that quiet darkness, Richard came to me. My Richard, my beloved husband. His image so clear, so comforting. I could almost hear his deep, steady voice, his gentle laugh. I remembered his promise to protect me, always, to stand by me no matter what. He had kept that promise, silently, faithfully, all these years. And our life together, it was a tapestry woven with quiet moments, shared dreams, deep understanding, and a love that was so private, so profound, that my children, Mark and Brenda, could not even begin to imagine it. They lived in a world of outward appearances, of flashing lights and grand pronouncements. Our world, Richard's and mine, was built on something entirely different, something real and enduring, something that didn't need to be advertised. Richard's love was my safe harbor, my steady anchor in a stormy sea. And the truth about our union, about the quiet, powerful life we had built together, was my most powerful trump card, the one I had held close for so long, waiting. My apparent passivity, the way I simply sat there, absorbing their jabs without a visible flinch, wasn't a sign of defeat. It was a strategy, a carefully chosen moment of calm, a deep breath before the storm. The storm I would orchestrate, piece by careful piece. I had something they had completely forgotten, something they never considered I possessed. I had the quiet, unwavering dignity of someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. I didn't need their validation, their approval, their acceptance. Not anymore. I had the truth, guarded under lock and key, a secret that had been patiently waiting for its time to be exposed. They saw me, a simple old woman, humiliated, lost, someone to be pitied or worse, ignored. They thought they had seen the full measure of me, the limits of my existence. They were so wrong. What they saw was just the surface, the quiet wrapper around a powerful force. A silent force, yes, but one ready to explode. I just had to wait for the perfect, most opportune moment. And it was coming. Oh, it was coming. The ceremony itself was a blur. I sat there, a silent observer, feeling the coldness of their disregard, even as my beautiful granddaughter, Chloe, glowed with happiness. I focused on her joy, trying to let it be a shield against the barbs my own children were constantly throwing, even if only through their dismissive glances and whispered comments. I could feel their eyes on me, still, even through the sacred vows, a constant pressure on my back, a reminder of their scorn. But I didn't break. I just breathed, and I waited. After the ceremony, the real performance began. The cocktail hour. It was supposed to be a time of celebration, of mingling, of warm congratulations. But for me, it was just an extension of the public humiliation. Mark and Brenda, they seemed to be everywhere, their smiles wide, their laughs loud, playing the perfect hosts, and they made sure I knew my place, my marginalized place. They were subtle about it, of course, always polite, but with an edge. If I tried to move towards a group, to join a conversation with some distant relatives or family friends, one of them would appear, as if by magic. "Mom, you're tired," Brenda would say, her voice soft, almost caring, but her eyes, they were hard. They said something entirely different. They said, "Go away, disappear. You don't need to stand so much. Why don't you find a nice quiet corner?" Mark would chime in, a hand gently on my arm, guiding me away from the very people I might have wanted to speak with, people who might have offered a kind word, a moment of real human connection. They weren't physically stopping me, not in a way anyone else would notice, but their actions, their words, they were a cage, a very polite, very effective cage that kept me isolated. I saw the important guests, people I'd known for years, some even close friends of Richard's family. I saw them approach Mark and Brenda, shake their hands, share jokes. I saw my children beam with pride, soaking up the attention, presenting their perfect family image, and I, the mother of the groom, was kept meticulously out of the frame. They wanted me to be a blemish, yes, but a blemish they could control, keep hidden in the shadows. They moved me from one quiet corner to another, always with that feigned concern. "Mom, you've been on your feet all day," or "It's a bit noisy here, isn't it? Perhaps a quieter spot?" But their eyes, always their eyes, they showed a clear, undeniable desire to see me disappear, to simply vanish. And it wasn't just them. Some distant cousins, people I'd known since they were children, who had once played in my garden, they became silent accomplices. They would look at me, and their eyes would quickly dart away. Or they'd offer a forced smile, thin and unconvincing, that barely hid their judgment, their agreement with Mark and Brenda's silent assessment of me. They didn't speak up. They didn't ask if I was all right. They just watched, complicit in the quiet cruelty unfolding around me. I felt like a stranger, a complete outsider at my own family's celebration. Alone, truly alone, amidst a crowd of people who were supposed to be my kin, my closest ties. The music, a cheerful, upbeat melody, seemed to mock me. The laughter, so bright and carefree, seemed to echo in my head, drowning out everything else, drowning out my inner voice, the one that clamored for justice, for recognition, for simply being seen, the one that screamed, "I am here, I am Eleanor." But I stayed quiet. I watched. I absorbed. I felt every slight, every dismissive glance, every forced smile. The pain, it wasn't a sharp stab anymore. It was a slow, agonizing throb. It had been building all day, all year, really. It reached its peak right then, in that bustling, beautiful ballroom, amidst the clinking of glasses and the chatter of happy guests. I took a deep, shaky breath. My lungs burned with the effort. My hands, they were trembling just slightly, but enough for me to notice. It was time. There was no more time for patience. No more time for quiet suffering. The charade had gone on for far too long. The humiliation, it had gone too far. They thought they had won. They thought they had put me in my place, a frail, inconsequential old woman. They thought they had successfully erased me from their perfect picture. My fingers fumbled in my small handbag, searching. And then I found it. My phone, that little device, so insignificant in their eyes, held the key. It was time to make the call. The one that would change everything. The one that would put an end to this charade, to this endless public torment. The revelation would be as impactful as my suffering had been profound. It had to be. And then, just as the evening's festivities reached their crescendo, right there, at the height of the party, he arrived. It wasn't a miracle, not really. It was just the answer to my silent call, the culmination of a quiet plan. Richard. My Richard. His presence, even from the lobby entrance, was unmistakable. He was imposing, yes, but not in a showy way. More like an anchor, a solid force. Heads turned, conversations quieted, then stopped altogether, as if a collective gasp had stolen the air from the room. His very presence drew everyone's attention, like a magnet. Mark and Brenda, they were still holding court near the dance floor, laughing, clinking glasses, completely oblivious. Until they saw him, I watched their faces. They froze. Their smiles, so practiced and wide, vanished. Their eyes widened, blinking, trying to process what they were seeing. Who was this man? What was he doing here? There was a flicker of confusion, then a dawning incomprehension. They couldn't possibly understand the connection, not yet. Richard didn't even glance at anyone else. His eyes, clear and steady, found mine across the crowded ballroom. And then, with a serene, almost gentle smile, he began to walk, directly to me. He moved with a quiet purpose, cutting through the stunned silence. He reached me, and the world seemed to narrow to just the two of us. He bent low and kissed my hand, so tenderly. Then he embraced me, holding me close, a warmth spreading through me that chased away the cold of the past hours. "My dearest Eleanor," he said, his voice deep and resonant, loud and clear enough for many to hear. "I've missed you." The silence in the ballroom deepened. You could hear a pin drop. All eyes were on us. Mark and Brenda, they had finally managed to make their way over, their faces pale, their expressions a mixture of confusion and something that looked a lot like fear. They still couldn't put it together. And then I spoke, my voice surprisingly steady, ringing out in that profound quiet. "Mark, Brenda," I said, looking directly at my children, who now stood utterly motionless before me. "This is Richard. Richard, my husband." The words hung in the air, simple yet devastating. The shock was visible, not just on my children's faces, but on every single person in that room. Gasps rippled through the crowd, quickly stifled. Mark's jaw went slack. Brenda's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. Their reputations, their carefully constructed image of success and social standing, I could almost feel them shattering around them. But the true blow, the one that would truly hit them to their core, was yet to come. Richard took my hand, his grip firm and comforting. He looked out at the stunned faces, his gaze sweeping over everyone, lingering for a moment on my children. He spoke, his voice calm, clear, and utterly unwavering. "And this magnificent country estate," he stated, his arm making a sweeping gesture around the opulent ballroom, the very place where they had celebrated their triumph and my humiliation. "Where we're celebrating this wedding is the gift I gave my beloved wife." He paused, letting that sink in. Then he continued, every word a hammer blow to their carefully built world. "Now, it legally belongs to Mrs. Eleanor, along with the foundation she will create here for seniors." Just then, as if on cue, a man in a crisp suit carrying a leather briefcase stepped forward, a notary. He approached us, opening the case, revealing a stack of documents. He held them up, briefly, for all to see. Papers signed, sealed, and official. Confirming the property transfer, signed by Richard in my name just a few months prior. All quiet, all meticulously planned. My children, they were beyond pale now, ghastly even. Their faces were ashen, stripped of all color, all pretense. Their perfect social standing, their carefully curated image, lay in ruins around them. The humiliation they had so gleefully inflicted upon me, the laughter, the scorn, the public dismissal, it had now in one swift, undeniable stroke fallen squarely upon them. Not out of vengeance, no. My heart didn't scream for revenge. It was simply the absolute, irrefutable, undeniable truth. The country estate, this grand, imposing place where they had disdained me, where they had made me feel so small and insignificant, was now, legally, undeniably, part of my inheritance. It was the fruit of my secret marriage, of a love that ran deeper than anything they could ever comprehend. It was the love of a man who saw in me the dignity they had so carelessly, so cruelly despised. There were no shouts, not from them, not from me, not from anyone. Only the heavy, suffocating quietness of profound shock, the absolute certainty that the truth, quiet and patient, had triumphed. And in that silence, as I stood there, hand in hand with Richard, a new chapter was beginning. A chapter they would never have expected, and one I was now ready to write. And in that silence, as I stood there, hand in hand with Richard, a new chapter was beginning. A chapter they would never have expected, and one I was now ready to write. The quiet that settled over the ballroom that night, after Richard spoke those words, it was something I'll never forget. It wasn't a sad quiet, not anymore. It was a listening quiet, a shocking quiet. For Mark and Brenda, it must have felt like a punch to the gut. For me, it felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in years. Air tasted different, lighter. My life, my very existence, it took a brand new direction right then and there. But it wasn't about revenge, you see. My heart wasn't screaming for them to suffer as I had. No, it was about something much deeper. It was about finding peace and purpose, finally. With Richard's steady hand in mine, with his quiet, unwavering support, everything began to shift. The country estate, this magnificent place that had been the stage for my greatest humiliation, it became something else entirely. It became a mission, my mission. We turned it into a foundation for mistreated seniors, a place of support, a place of welcome, a sanctuary, really, for those who had felt invisible, just like I had. My name, Eleanor, the one they had whispered about with disdain, the one they had associated with frailty and quiet humiliation, it was now a symbol of dignity, a symbol of resilience. It felt right. It felt true. Mark and Brenda, they tried to reach out. Oh, they did. Calls, texts, even a few letters. Full apologies, full of explanations, full of a sudden, desperate desire to be part of my new life, to understand. But I kept my distance, not out of anger, not really, but because it was necessary. For my own healing, my soul needed space to mend, away from the very people who had broken it. Some wounds, you just have to let them breathe, let them close up on their own terms. And that meant creating boundaries, keeping a quiet distance while I found my footing again. My relationship with Chloe, my sweet granddaughter, that was different. It blossomed. It truly did. After that night, she came to me, not with apologies, but with tears, and a quiet, dawning understanding. Our talks became longer, deeper. She saw me, truly saw me, for the first time, I think. She saw the strength beneath the quietness, the love that had been there all along. Our bond grew strong, based on admiration now, on real respect, not on obligation or pity or dismissal. It was a beautiful thing, like a delicate flower, finally opening after a long winter. My days now, they have a different rhythm, a peaceful one. I spend time in meetings for the foundation, planning, organizing, making sure we reach those who need us most. It's fulfilling work, work that fills my heart. But I also have my tranquil moments. My garden. Yes, I still have my garden. Not a big Texas one anymore, but a beautiful one here, within the estate itself. I tend to the flowers, feel the soil in my hands, watch the bees. It brings me a quiet, profound joy. And my home now, it's not modest on the outside, but it's still simple on the inside. Comfortable, cozy. It's right here on the estate grounds, with the peace I had always sought, finally, truly found. I don't live in excessive luxury. That was never my way, never what I desired. But I live in comfort, in security, and with the certainty that my story, the one I lived through, the one I survived, could actually change other lives. It's a powerful feeling, you know? My greatest treasure, it isn't this grand property or the money that comes with it. No, my greatest treasure is the freedom. The freedom to be exactly who I truly am, to honor myself, to honor the memory of my struggle, of every painful step I took to get here. This country estate, the very stage of my deepest pain, it didn't just become a foundation. It became the foundation of my new life, a sanctuary, a place of hope, for me and for so many others. And in that silence, as I stood there, hand in hand with Richard, a new chapter was beginning. A chapter they would never have expected, and one I was now ready to write. The quiet that settled over the ballroom that night, after Richard spoke those words, it was something I'll never forget. It wasn't a sad quiet, not anymore. It was a listening quiet, a shocking quiet. For Mark and Brenda, it must have felt like a punch to the gut. For me, it felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in years. The air tasted different, lighter. My life, my very existence, it took a brand new direction right then and there. But it wasn't about revenge, you see. My heart wasn't screaming for them to suffer as I had. No, it was about something much deeper. It was about finding peace and purpose. Finally, with Richard's steady hand in mine, with his quiet, unwavering support, everything began to shift. The country estate, this magnificent place that had been the stage for my greatest humiliation, it became something else entirely. It became a mission, my mission. We turned it into a foundation for mistreated seniors, a place of support, a place of welcome, a sanctuary, really, for those who had felt invisible, just like I had. My name, Eleanor, the one they had whispered about with disdain, the one they had associated with frailty and quiet humiliation. It was now a symbol of dignity, a symbol of resilience. It felt right. It felt true. Mark and Brenda, they tried to reach out. Oh, they did. Calls, texts, even a few letters. Full of apologies, full of explanations, full of a sudden, desperate desire to be part of my new life, to understand. But I kept my distance, not out of anger, not really, but because it was necessary for my own healing. My soul needed space to mend, away from the very people who had broken it. Some wounds, you just have to let them breathe. Let them close up on their own terms. And that meant creating boundaries, keeping a quiet distance while I found my footing again. My relationship with Chloe, my sweet granddaughter, that was different. It blossomed. It truly did. After that night, she came to me, not with apologies, but with tears, and a quiet, dawning understanding. Our talks became longer, deeper. She saw me, truly saw me, for the first time, I think. She saw the strength beneath the quietness, the love that had been there all along. Our bond grew strong, based on admiration now, on real respect, not on obligation or pity or dismissal. It was a beautiful thing, like a delicate flower finally opening after a long winter. My days now, they have a different rhythm, a peaceful one. I spend time in meetings for the foundation, planning, organizing, making sure we reach those who need us most. It's fulfilling work, work that fills my heart. But I also have my tranquil moments, my garden. Yes, I still have my garden. Not a big Texas one anymore, but a beautiful one here, within the estate itself. I tend to the flowers, feel the soil in my hands, watch the bees. It brings me a quiet, profound joy. And my home now, it's not modest on the outside, but it's still simple on the inside. Comfortable, cozy. It's right here on the estate grounds. with the peace I had always sought, finally, truly found. I don't live in excessive luxury. That was never my way, never what I desired. But I live in comfort, in security, and with the certainty that my story, the one I lived through, the one I survived, could actually change other lives. It's a powerful feeling, you know? My greatest treasure, it isn't this grand property or the money that comes with it. No, my greatest treasure is the freedom to be exactly who I truly am, to honor myself, to honor the memory of my struggle, of every painful step I took to get here. This country estate, the very stage of my deepest pain, it didn't just become a foundation. It became the foundation of my new life, a sanctuary, a place of hope, for me and for so many others. And you? Have you ever been treated as if you were invisible by those who should protect you most? Have you ever felt the contempt of someone who should love you simply for living a life different from what they expected? I learned that pain, deep pain, can become a teacher. It can show you who you are, what you're made of, and what truly matters. I learned that justice isn't always loud, isn't always immediate. Sometimes it's a quiet truth, a slow unfolding, but when it arrives, it's undeniable. And a new beginning, well, that's always possible. It can come when you least expect it, or when you've almost given up hope. What I truly understand now, more than ever, is the absolute importance of respect. Not just the kind you earn with titles or money, but the kind you give to every single human being, simply because they are. Every person has dignity, a story, a life that deserves to be seen, to be honored, and especially for us, the older ones, the ones who have lived, who have loved, who have stumbled and risen again. Sometimes we're seen as frail, as past our prime, as disposable. But we are not. We hold so much wisdom, so much resilience, so much life still left to give. Our worth doesn't diminish with age, but only grows, deeper and richer, like fine wine. We deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be treated with the kindness and honor that every soul deserves. This journey, it taught me that you must hold on to your own worth, even when others try to strip it away. You must trust in the quiet strength that lives inside you, because sometimes that's all you have, and sometimes that's all you need to turn everything around. And you? Have you ever been treated as if you were invisible by those who should protect you most? Have you ever felt the contempt of someone who should love you simply for living a life different from what they expected? I learned that pain, deep pain, can become a teacher. It can show you who you are, what you're made of, and what truly matters. I learned that justice isn't always loud, isn't always immediate. Sometimes it's a quiet truth, a slow unfolding, but when it arrives, it's undeniable. And a new beginning, well, that's always possible. It can come when you least expect it, or when you've almost given up hope. What I truly understand now, more than ever, is the absolute importance of respect. Not just the kind you earn with titles or money, but the kind you give to every single human being simply because they are. Every person has dignity, a story, a life that deserves to be seen, to be honored. And especially for us, the older ones, the ones who have lived, who have loved, who have stumbled and risen again. Sometimes we're seen as frail, as past our prime, as disposable. But we are not. We hold so much wisdom, so much resilience, so much life still left to give. Our worth doesn't diminish with age, but only grows deeper and richer like fine wine. We deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be treated with the kindness and honor that every soul deserves. This journey, it taught me that you must hold on to your own worth, even when others try to strip it away. You must trust in the quiet strength that lives inside you, because sometimes that's all you have. And sometimes that's all you need to turn everything around. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this, stay alert. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm you're still subscribed to the channel and hit the bell icon. It's not just about me, Eleanor, anymore. It's about all of us, finding our voice, our purpose, and holding on to the beautiful truth of who we are. It's about remembering that even in the quietest moments, your story holds a power that can change everything.